Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is exciting. This is our first collaboration with the Gallo Center for the Arts and the Gallo Center Repertory Company. My name is Kirsty Boyette, and I'm the Executive Director of the State Theater. And we are really excited to partner with the Gallo Center Repertory Company, and the State Theater. So I'm going to now, a couple of things, sorry. We do our next week, we have another virtual educational seminar. We are partnering with Sam Piersdorf and his son Hakeem, and they're going to talk about the Poet Society. And Sam said at the board meeting this morning, he said that really inspired him to become who he is today. And he said his youngest son saw the movie and it brought him to tears, knowing that what that movie meant to Sam as a man. So that was really cool. So I encourage you to sign up for that one. I will be sending you out a survey after this, kind of getting your feedback about timing and how you like the programming. But what's not to love about a collaboration with the Gallo Center. So please follow up with that. I will also be sending you a link. I've been participating in a lot of these in the industry, and a lot of our industry friends all across the country are charging for this, and we're not. So I encourage you to make a donation to the State Theater and Gallo Center Repertory Company, because we're all doing this. We're not getting any income, and we appreciate any support you can give us, because we're all closed, as you know. So thank you for that. We are working on drive-ins, believe it or not. I had a meeting yesterday with the city and the Nuts, so we're going to be hopefully doing our first drive-in at John Thurman Field on.
Oh, really? That's excellent. Oh, that's great.
I'm so excited. And
really good.
I won't tell you what movie we're going to show, but you'll be really excited, Wes. But we're hoping, I don't want to divulge too much. We've not gotten into the nuts and bolts of it yet, but there will be drive-ins coming shortly with a partnership with the Nuts, the city, and the State Theater. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I'll turn over to Jim Johnson, who is the artistic coordinator for Gallo, and put this whole thing on. So there's going to be two parts. It's going to be, we're going to talk about the radio show and how it came to be. Wes Page did all the editing, cutting, and then we're going to transition to the movie and how they work together. So with that, I'll turn over to Jim. Thank you.
Hey. Thanks, Kirsty. And welcome everybody to the State Theater and Gallo Center Repertory Company virtual theater discussion about All About Eve. I'm Jim Johnson, and it's my privilege tonight to be the host and moderator of this tonight's discussion. The Gallo Center Repertory Company was well into its 2019-2020 theater season when, of course, because of the pandemic, everything came to a screeching halt and all live theater was shut down. This was a huge disappointment to everybody, to the actors, to the directors, the technicians, and to our audience members. So we were all stuck at home, and the thought was, what do we do now? In late March, I received an invitation from playwright Jason Odell Williams, who I had gotten to know and corresponded with when we did our production here of Church and State. Jason is a playwright who wrote the script, and it had performed off-Broadway. He invited me to watch a Zoom performance of the play with 4 of the original actors. They were all in separate locations, and they were doing the play as if they were all together, and Zoom brought them together. And it was really a great experience. I really enjoyed it, learned something about Zoom, and it got me thinking that that's something that we could do here in Modesto in this period of lockdown, to do some Zoom performances of classic radio dramas from the 1940s and 1950s by bringing into play some of the finest actors in our area. So I took the idea to my friend Wes Page. Wes and I have been friends and colleagues for over 40 years, and I broached this idea with him, and he got excited, and he really encouraged us to go forward with it. But he suggested we go a step further than a Zoom performance, and that would be to have the actors perform their lines in front of a green screen, which would allow Wes to add appropriate backdrops to, and then the actors who are all working solo, through the magic of editing, he could together. And I'm going to let Wes describe the process because it's really intriguing and it presented a lot of challenges to Wes, which were really exciting. So I put out the call to actors in our area, and I got an overwhelmingly positive response. So we were off to the races. So far, we have produced 4 virtual theater productions: The Fall of the House of Usher, The Maltese Falcon, The Time Machine, and our subject for tonight, All About Eve. All of these performances, by the way, are available on the Gallo Center Repertory Company Facebook page. So you can go there and watch them at your convenience. But let me begin tonight by introducing to you the production staff and the actors who starred in the virtual theater performance and the classic film performance of All About Eve. So we have a PowerPoint, and hopefully everything's going to work, and Kirsty's going to shoot that up there for me. Hopefully.
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, that first slide is the Gallo Center Repertory Company's virtual theater production of All About Eve. Let's go on to the next slide. And that's me. I'm the director, producer of the series, and had a great experience doing it. Next slide. And there's the man. This is my dear friend and colleague of over 40 years, Wes Page. Wes and I have worked on numerous productions together, and he's the genius that put all of this together. So you'll be hearing from him in just a moment. Next. Charlene West, wonderful actress, plays Margot Channing. Charlene was supposed to be with us tonight, but she had some other obligations. But let me just say that Charlene is one of the finest actresses in our area, and her performance as Margot Channing is superb. Next. And there's the original Margot. Oh, you went a little fast.
Oh, sorry.
We go back just one. There's the original Margot Channing in the movie, the great Bette Davis. Next slide. Alicia Dooley, who's with us tonight, and you're going to be hearing from her in just a few minutes. Alicia is a wonderful young actress, and she plays the part of Eve Harrington. Next slide. And there is Anne Baxter with Bette Davis. Anne Baxter played Eve Harrington in the film. Next, please. Ariel Hicks plays Miss Caswell. Miss Caswell comes in our play at the very end of the play. And Ariel has a wonderful little moment. And let's show the next slide, and we'll show who played Miss Caswell in the movie. Marilyn Monroe. This was her first screen appearance in a film, playing Miss Caswell, an aspiring actress. Next slide. David Hambley, wonderful actor. He's performed throughout Modesto, Merced, Turlock, all the theater companies. David plays Bill, the director in the play. Next slide. And there is a picture of Gary Merrill, who played Bill in the original movie. Next slide. Dean Medic is an actor that I've worked with. He and I acted together in a production of Our Town. Dean is a wonderful actor who has done some great performances at Modesto Junior College and elsewhere. I especially want to pay him tribute for playing Prospero in The Tempest and in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He plays Addison, the snide critic in the play. Next. And there's George Sanders, who won the Best Supporting Actor in 1950 as Addison. I think there's one more picture of Addison. Let's go to the next one. Yep, there he is, sneering, not very lovable character. Okay, next slide. Ryan Jadish plays Lloyd, the playwright. Ryan is also a wonderful actor. This was just a superb cast. I couldn't have had a better group of actors. I recently worked with Ryan in The Odd Couple, where he played Felix, and he was terrific. So let's go to the next slide. And there is, I failed to mention that Ryan is playing Lloyd Richards, and Hugh Marlowe, driving the car there, was the Lloyd in the movie. Next. And finally, but last but not least, is my dear friend Heike Hambley. Heike plays Ruth in the play. Heike is the founding director of the Merced Shakespeare Festival. She and I have collaborated on lots of shows at the Gallo Center, and we hope to do a lot more when things open up again. Let's have the final slide. And that's Celeste Holm, a great actress that played Ruth in the movie. Okay, that concludes the slide part of this. Tonight, you're going to meet at least one of the actresses who has the lead in All About Eve, who will discuss their performances in the show and the challenges that they felt that they met in the production. But first, let me turn the program over to my colleague and friend Wes Page. Wes is going to describe to you how this unique process took place, and again, what some of the challenges he's faced. So Wes, take it over.
Thank you, Jim. It has been a learning experience for me as well as the actors, and it's really a challenge in so many ways, because these are actors that are very experienced on stage where they're interacting with other actors. But of course, we can't do that. We're in the middle of this COVID-19 thing. So the actors have to do their lines, deliver their lines as though there's someone else as though their co-actor is there, but they don't have that advantage. So that's one thing they had to overcome. Maybe it's an advantage here. They did not have to memorize lines. Instead, we used a teleprompter, or essentially it's an iPad that has a teleprompter app on it. And the placement of the teleprompter, I would always put it where the actor that they are supposedly interacting with is located. So put it at eye level. So if the actor's over here, I would put the iPad or the teleprompter so that they can read their lines, but it looks as though they are interacting with their other actors. So that's a challenge, because that's not the way you normally do it on stage. We do everything in front of a green screen, and of course with that I can eliminate anything that's green. And if they're wearing something green, then we have real problems. But the background can then be replaced with something that's appropriate for what they're talking about, or where they are playing. As we do these, each time there's a new scene, I always like to do what's called an establishing shot. And that, to me, was a big challenge, because if there are 5 people in the scene, I have to get 5 different green screen characters and put them in the appropriate location so that they are looking the appropriate direction to interact with the other actors. And that to me was one of the biggest challenges. And you'll see that in the radio drama All About Eve, in the club where they're sitting at a table. The table's not even there. The background is not there. each individual performer is all separate, but it's a wonderful challenge. Sophisticated viewers like you will spot all manner of inconsistencies or problems, but realizing what the challenges were, hopefully you can accept that, and it's a delightful, wonderful way of making lemons or making lemonade when you have lemons. We're doing the best we can with the limitations. Going one step further, I'm really looking forward to the next production we're going to be doing with the Sankofa Theater actors. We're going to be doing The Hitchhiker, and that I'm going to try to even bump up the production value even further by doing some practical rather than green screen shots. It takes place in the 40s, so we have someone that has loaned us a 1941 Cadillac. So we're going to actually put a green screen behind that outdoors and still maintaining distance, wearing masks and everything, except for the actors, of course, and I keep my distance from the actors. Anyway, it's just a delightful project that I'm really delighted to be a part of. And I think I've rambled on long enough, so I'll turn it back to you, Jim. But I hope you enjoy what we're doing, and it's a real delight for us. Thank you.
I've got a question for you, Wes, and I want to bring in our other panelists who may have questions for you as well. We've done 4 of these so far. This was probably the most challenging for you, wouldn't you say, All About Eve?
Absolutely.
What made it so? What
Well,
made it so?
it's twice as long for one. That's the main thing. And then I also had some personal issues that a death of a dear friend, but just the challenge of making sure that we had it ready for this night was somewhat of a challenge. But I'm glad that I accepted that challenge, because the actors they're all delightful to work with. I didn't actually record all of the actors. Elisa, she did her own with her dad, and it's a fun challenge. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it is a challenge. It's very time consuming for me, but it's time well spent, because I really feel that the creative influence of all these actors doing their thing, combining into one project, is just, what is it? It's a blessing. It's wonderful.
Let me follow up on one thing that you said that I think our viewers may find interesting, is that when I recruited the actors, knowing that this was going to be virtual and they could be anywhere, we have actors in our performances. One of them is in Ohio, one of them is in Chicago. Of course, Alicia is in Sonora. And the first one we did, the 2 actors were in Merced, and they recorded themselves, which I think, again, was a challenge for you, because you had to put these 2 divergent films together. That was The Fall of the House of Usher, but it worked pretty well.
It did, and everyone, each individual person brings their own uniqueness to it, including unique lighting and so on. But if those sophisticated viewers can just kind of accept some things that aren't quite as they should be, hopefully you'll have a delightful time watching the efforts of everyone.
Great. Do any of our other panelists have any questions for Wes? Just raise your hand if you do. Yeah, Arnold.
Yeah, Wes, and this is something that I've watched. I mean, we've all watched lots and lots of these theater productions online. I have not seen one as sophisticated as the one you guys did, which I thought was amazing. The last one was just really, really good. I mean, it just, the production value, it seems like every one, the production value has become more sophisticated. So it is really interesting. But in one that I saw that was, in a certain sense, very simple. It was done in Zoom, so it was live. The actors were, in different places, and they were just actors on a screen, and they didn't have any backgrounds. It's very straightforward. But when the actors talked afterward about how they did the play, they and the director were saying that in order to make the eye lines worked, and that's where I'm going with this, is they were able to turn, or somebody had a prop. Somebody picked up a glass and gave the person next to him a drink. That kind of, you have the slap, which is a great scene. But it seems to me that when they interviewed the actors, they said that in their room where they were performing, they had little pieces of tape all over to show when he says this, I look here. When he says go out the window, I look there. And I'm wondering how, because I think the eye lines looked really good. And I'm just wondering how that all came together in this production.
Essentially, for those that we would tell them where the other actor is, for one thing. That's crucial. But then beyond that, as far as their eye line, where they're looking right at the individual character, placement of their lines or the teleprompter, it's imperative that is right at eye level where the actor's eyes would be. And it's not a foolproof method by any means, because sometimes
it's really good though.
Oh yeah. and also one step further that is very time consuming, but it's a fun challenge, is the background. For an establishing shot, you'll see in the background a wide shot of the entire club, if you're in a club or whatever. But then when we see the individual close-ups, which are for me easier because I don't have to deal with several characters at one time. But for each individual character, each one has to have a different close-up of their background. So that is a sort of a double whammy as far as editing, because you're not only editing the dialogue from person A to person B, but the background from person A to person B also has to make sense, because you can't just leave a wide shot as the background, and it just wouldn't work.
Yeah, you did a really nice job of moving from close-ups to medium shots to essentially establishing shots. I was really, it really like moved like very filmically. And then I was thinking, God, how did he do that? Because you basically just have like lots of little pieces of dialogue, right? And then you kind of assemble it all.
It's
something.
It's fun. It's fun.
One of my favorite moments of Wes's filming with All About Eve is the scene with Addison and Eve when Addison slaps her, and then Wes gets his face right in the camera as he's screaming, "Don't you ever laugh at me again." I thought that was a real powerful moment. Any other questions for Wes?
Actually, the censors wanted that removed.
Really?
They didn't, it was too violent.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was kind of fun, thinking back in the 1950s, was there's one scene with Ruth and her husband in bed, but they're in separate beds, kind of like Lucy and Ruthie.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
It was the 1950s.
Yes, but they got away with a fair amount of double entendres.
Yeah, they sure did.
They would always overwrite the scripts so they could bargain and say, well, if you give me this, I'll give you that. And, yes.
Great.
Talking about
Wes,
that, the slap that you talked about earlier. Oh, I was like, go ahead, Christy. Go ahead.
So Charlene joined us, which
I see her. Hey, Charlene.
And number two, if anyone has any questions, please click on the Q&A at the bottom, and Jim and I will be moderating that, and Jim will be asking the panelists those questions. So feel free to ask any questions. The chat is really for you to talk amongst yourself and be like, all right, good talk, but the Q&A is where you really need to go to ask questions for Jim to see, for him to ask the panelists. So I apologize for not saying that earlier, but.
Great, we'll get to them. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we got Charlene now, so I've got both actresses. Perfect timing, Charlene.
Hi, Margot.
Yeah. So at this time, I want to bring into the discussion two of the lead actresses in All About Eve, Charlene West, who played Margot Channing, and Alicia Dooley, who played Eve Harrington. And Charlene, I'm going to start with you. Charlene and I have worked together on many projects over the years. I love working with Charlene. I've directed her, I've acted with her. Before the pandemic hit, Charlene and I were scheduled to play the father and mother in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, with Heike Hambley directing. that project's been put on hold, but hopefully when things are back to normal, we'll be able to do that production. So Charlene, great to see you. Glad you're back with us.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you a question about the process that Wes was describing from an actor's perspective. This was really unique. I dare say I don't know any actors who have done this kind of acting in front of a green screen without an acting partner there. What was your feeling about this unique form of acting? And tell us a little bit about the process from your perspective and the challenges you felt.
Sure. Well, first of all, when Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was postponed, I was very sad. And like all of us, I think artistically, creatively, feeling a little dry. And so when Jim asked who's interested in doing these Zoom staged readings, of course, everyone raised their hand and we all wanted to do it. So I was thrilled with being given the part of Margot. I had never seen the movie, and when I read the script, I fell in love with it. We had 2 practices, so we had 2 readings over Zoom, and the same actors weren't in the same one because I think Alicia's dad was in one playing a part, and we had to bring in actors. So we really didn't even have 2 full readings. And then we were kind of told, okay, just get your costumes together, research your hair, get your props together, and good luck. And so I didn't know what to
Great direction, huh?
Yeah. And so I was really worried about how I was going to react to the other characters, because so much about acting is reacting to what someone else is saying. I was explaining earlier that when we had our prompts that were going, that Wes had going in his garage. He did a fabulous job, but only our lines were there. None of the other actors' lines were there. So I'm trying to imagine and remember what the other actors were saying, so I knew how to react to it. So that was a little bit hard. Sometimes the teleprompter went quickly and I was trying to get out my lines fast, and other times it went too slowly, so we had to adjust. I think for me, the most difficult part, looking back on it, I did watch the movie a couple of days ago. And I wish kind of that I had watched it first, because our script had deleted some of the lines in the movie. And then we even did an edit of our script so that even less lines were there. And I think a lot of the things that were cut out were important for me to know on how to react. Like doing it now, I would react differently to Eve. I liked the movie. They really built that relationship, and I think the script that we used didn't. And if I'd known some of the lines that were missing, it would have helped with some of the context of the way I delivered my lines. So looking back now, I would redo some of them, but I thought it was a fascinating process. And when we were done and I saw what Wes did, the magic that he created, I was very impressed and just thankful for this opportunity.
Well, you were wonderful in that performance. And
I think Arnold has a comment.
Arnold, yes.
Yeah, Charlene, I have to say, and I think this might be an argument for you not having seen the film, but I actually liked you, and I didn't like her. I mean, what I thought was really, and you guys did a great job, and really liked the performance. But as a character, you were actually genuinely likable, and you were still brilliant and an actor and temperamental and all that and emotional and all that. You know, you pulled all that off. But you were like in this positive realm. And with her, she's just so unlikable all the way through. I mean, it's unfortunate the way it works out, and you feel sorry for her. But I don't feel like, oh, I really care for her, and I'm sorry she's in trouble. And with you, I totally did. I felt that. So I thought you really, that really felt different to me in terms of the way the role was played. And I really appreciated that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment. I agree. Let me.
The Q&A panel as to how long did it take to produce the Gallo adaptation for tonight?
How long did it take?
To produce it.
Here, Wes, from the time we started, you know, I found all of these scripts on a website called Simply Scripts. And there were like 200 radio scripts from the 1940s and 50s. Most of them were kind of schlocky things like Flash Gordon and Fibber McGee and stuff like that. But buried in among them were classic stories, and I was attracted to those. So I pulled out all of the classics that I recognized, and I started reading the scripts. So that was kind of my period of time when I was just reviewing scripts. Once we zeroed in on the 5 stories that we were going to tell, then Wes and I did some rehearsal plotting of how we wanted to do this. That then was followed by the 2 rehearsals that Charlene spoke of, where we got everybody, all of the actors together on Zoom, and in some cases we didn't have all of the actors, so I was reading and Wes was reading, that sort of thing. But from the time we started shooting, Wes, how long would you say from the shoot to you finishing editing? Would you say about a month, 5 weeks?
You know, I have no idea. With the pandemic, I don't even know what day it is. But I just know that I sit in front of my computer for many hours per day, loving it. And it was not drudgery. It was something that was truly a creative process. And so I can't even tell you the good answer. I really don't know.
I know that Wes says he loved every minute of it, but I know there were times when I didn't want to call Wes and bug him about, how far along are you? When can I see something? You'll see it soon. No, he's just did a great job and continues to do a great job. So I'm guessing about 4 to 5 weeks once we first started. I want to bring in Alicia now. Alicia and I have not had a lot of experiences working together like Charlene and I have. Alicia was in the Gallo Center repertory production of Children of the Dust Bowl, and she was terrific in that. She really made an impression of that. And shortly after that, Arnold, who you're going to meet, you've already met him, but he's going to talk a little bit more. Arnold Schmidt and Ken White had written a new play. Arnold, what was the title of the play? I forget.
Silence is Golden.
Silence
yeah,
is
Alicia,
Golden.
you were great. Catherine, my wife and I were talking about you the other night. Oh, she did such a great job.
Yeah, she did. And that made an impression on me, and
yeah,
it helped the authors hear their words come to life. And so when I got around to casting this, Alicia was one of the first people I thought of for Eve Harrington. And Alicia, you did a superb job. Let me ask you the same question I asked Charlene. What was unique about this for you, and what were the challenges that you faced as an actress?
Well, it was a very unique experience for me. I had a different experience than Charlene did because I was not able to go into Wes's studio. Because as I said before, I live up in Sonora area, and I'm also currently 8 months pregnant. So I'm not doing a lot of traveling right now. So I actually, my parents came up for the day, and my dad, who has been in a couple of these other productions, helped me with the filming. We taped a green screen to our living room wall, moved all the furniture out of the way. And I didn't use a teleprompter. I had my script on a music stand. And I placed the music stand wherever the actor was supposed to be. And my dad was reading the lead-in lines. And I must say, you know, he's a great actor and everything, but he really just doesn't hold a candle to Charlene when it comes to playing Margot.
That's
so that was
probably
very
best.
interesting because you didn't know how the other actors were playing things going in. I mean, we did have those Zoom read-throughs, but you know, so much changes when you're in there and in the zone and stuff. So it was just kind of doing my best of, I think she's probably going to be like this, or this is how my dad's playing it. I hope it's similar. But another challenge we had is, as Wes was talking about, he wanted those establishing shots, and doing a full body shot was interesting. So that's why a lot of the time you see me clutching a purse, and it may seem a little odd. I was hiding my belly, but it was really wonderful to be able to do this. You know, I really thought after doing Dust Bowl, I got pregnant not long after. I thought I was probably done performing for at least a year or two, just because of life. And so it's been really amazing to be a part of this and be able to play a role that otherwise I would not have been able to play at this time in my life. So I just really want to thank Jim for that opportunity. It's been really nice to be able to continue performing.
We'll do it again.
Wonderful.
Alicia, did you have the same response that Charlene did when you saw the film?
Yes, I did. I also did not see the film until a couple of days ago. And there were things in there. There was some context stuff that would have been nice to know. And I feel like there was a lot more of our relationship that was fostered in the film that we didn't necessarily have. But I also agree. I love the way, Charlene, that you played Margot. The Margot in the film, she was wonderful too, but she was a little whiny, and you were less whiny. You were more hurt, and I thought that was a really nice balance there. And I thought it was interesting the way the person played Eve. It was, I'm glad in some ways I'm glad I didn't watch it before, because I was able to really make the part my own and take it a different way. But there was definitely some context that would have been nice.
Well, I think it's important too to point out that Alicia and I have actually never met in person.
We haven't.
So someday I'd like to meet you.
I've heard so many wonderful things about you from my dad and everyone else, but no, we've never met in person. And
one of the things that I think Alicia did so well, we talked a little bit about this during the initial process, was the arc of her character, starting out as this sweet, innocent, naive young girl that everybody feels sorry for, and it gradually becomes this pretty evil character near the end of the play. And you did it gradually, and I thought it worked beautifully, Alicia.
Thank you.
Really a good performance. Charlene has kind of answered this question. Let me ask both of you again. When you saw the finished product and you're all interacting together, were you pleased, scared?
I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead, Alicia.
It was definitely like, I was very nervous about it coming out, because you don't know how everything turns out and everything, but I really liked it. I thought we did a pretty good job of playing off each other without actually being able to play off each other. So I was pleasantly surprised by how it all turned out. Definitely.
How about you, Charlene?
I agree. I am normally very, very critical of myself, and so I was cringing when I clicked on the link to watch it. And I didn't cry, so that's good. I thought Wes was amazing in how he did all the backgrounds and all the effects and the way he merged everything, and the music. I thought the music was beautiful, and I didn't know it was going to be filmed in the black and white or the sepia, however you did that, and I thought that added to it. So I was very pleasantly surprised. I wish sometimes the eyes were not on the same level, and so I noticed a few of those things. I think if we'd had maybe a couple more read-throughs, I think it would have been tighter.
Yeah. Arnold, you had a question.
Yeah, I had a comment that I wanted to make to Alicia. One of the things that when I think about the movie, one of the scenes that feels funny to me is the scene with Eve when she tells the story to Margot of her life. Early, they're in the dressing room, and it's very obvious that she is a melodramatic heroine, and she's performing to them as the audience. And Margot gets sucked in. I mean, she's in tears at the end of that. And that the way that Eve, I mean, it's really cool in the film, but it felt really like overtly theatrical, and in a sense false. In other words, kind of stylized to me. And I thought that when you did it, it felt much more naturalistic. you know, when you, because you have that same scene, but, you know, you're telling us about your husband and all that kind of stuff, but it felt much more, you know, it felt truer to me. And I thought that was a strength. You know, I was able to, you know, kind of, I liked you better too.
Thank you. That scene was definitely a challenge because, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I know the end, that this is all a lie, but knowing that I'm really trying to fool them and that my character has this warped sense of reality.
Yeah.
So trying to make that as real as I could was important to me, but I tried to throw in a little bit of, you know, maybe this isn't completely real. But thank you very much. I
No, it felt really nice.
Yeah. You didn't have Thelma Ritter there.
No.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, you know, in the radio script, Birdie is just a tiny role,
Yes.
and we just decided we didn't need any more actors in it. It was challenging enough to get everybody together.
But you've got a 218-minute movie.
Yeah.
Instead of what did this run, Wes? 40 minutes, the radio show?
It was almost an hour, about 60
Almost an
minutes.
hour?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing what you did with, you know, given what was the challenge was.
Well, that's a good lead in, a good transition to the next thing I want to cover, and that's I want to bring in my two colleagues, Arnold and Randy here, my two experts in film history. Randy Siefkin, Emeritus Professor of Political Science at MJC and President of the Modesto Film Society, and Arnold Schmidt, CSU Stanislaus English Professor and local playwright. Randy and Arnold, prior to this presentation, earlier in the week, did a wonderful history of All About Eve. That's available to watch, right, Kirsty, on the state Facebook page or website?
YouTube. We'll upload it to our YouTube page.
Okay, and you can see that.
This conversation to our YouTube page.
Okay, yeah. So if you're finding this interesting and you watched the movie and you watched our virtual theater production, please go and watch the presentation that Randy and Arnold did, because it's really informative. Let's talk about the film. Randy started talking about this. The film, 2 hours plus, and the Lux Radio show, approximately 55 minutes. Was it well, let me ask you guys this. Was it unusual back in the 1950s for actors, major actors in a major film, to then turn around and do an abridged radio version of the same play?
I think Arnold would agree. No, this was really very common.
Mm-hmm.
You also had the ability, if you go back and listen to the original Lux Radio Theatre, they used it as an opportunity to promote all of their other film products, as well as Lux Flakes.
Right, the soap.
which made whites whiter and colors brighter. And the actors and actresses would come in and endorse, you know, talk about product placement. This was pretty egregious there. So, I mean, and you took all those out. I missed them, but I didn't miss them. Reminded me of the old days.
So this was a common practice then?
Yes.
To
Very much so.
Radio was kind of on the wane, wasn't it, in the 1950s? You had television. There still was this crossover, but I imagine in the 1940s it was even more prevalent, with radio so popular and television not in existence.
Yes, and there were some. I mean, Bette Davis had played Now Voyager, played the lead role, one of her most outstanding films, and a number of other roles too. So it was a pretty common practice. Wouldn't you agree, Arnold?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think in a certain sense, certainly during the war, and these were played overseas for the service, you know, people in the service. And also I would think that as television starts to come in, this is a way of competing with television.
Yes.
People have seen the movie in the theater. It's not yet on TV, of course, and you're competing with live television, but you've got these radio plays that kind of pull you back into radio. So,
Arnold, let me address this question to you, and we've already talked a little bit about it, but I know it's comparing apples and oranges, but it is all about Eve. It's the same story. As a playwright, what's your reaction, your thoughts about the radio script itself versus the classic movie?
well, that's interesting, because I have to say, I'd also kind of put into the mix the short story, which ends with Karen on the plane because Eve is leaving with Richard, and she's going to get a divorce. Margot is, going away, and Karen's getting a divorce. So it is really interesting. What I feel is like that the heart of it is Eve, and the heart of it is Eve and Margot and that relationship. And I think that stays the same. And I think, in a certain sense, like if you think about what's cut from the film, like if you cut the party scene, you've saved 8 minutes. In other words, you guys have the party scene, but it's trimmed. So it seems like what you've got is almost a lot of the same stuff, but kind of telegraphed. And again, if you go back to the story, which is only maybe 8 or 10 pages long, it's very similar. In other words, a lot of the events are still there. It has elements that are different. But in the story, Eve makes it public that she has fooled Margot. Her whole thing is, I'm a great actor because I told this lie about my life, and Margot fell for it. And so suddenly she gets a lot of opportunities. She gets an opportunity to go to Hollywood, but then she just fizzles out. And there's a wonderful scene at the end of the story. The story both opens and closes with Eve at the stage door, but at the end she's already fallen. She's already lied to done the thing to Margot. Everybody's found out she's a scam, and she's nobody. And she's she's asking Margot, "Oh, please help me." And Karen, of course, does. She recommends her. "Oh, my husband has a new play. You'd be perfect for it." And she loses a husband. Eve does the comeback.
Pretty dark story there.
Yeah. So, I think, what you guys did that I think is very successful is you focused on the heart of the story, cut out, the subplot with Bertie and things like that. But, the dynamic, the relationship is Eve and Margot, and that I think worked really well.
Randy, you posed an interesting question. I'd like to get your reaction, Arnold's reaction, or anybody on the panel. The question that you posed is, who is the winner in the story? Is it Margot or Eve? Who triumphs in the story?
Good question for the actresses to start with.
I'll go ahead.
You can make arguments both ways. Yes.
I honestly, Eve wins in the sense that she gets everything she wants, but I don't think she wins because she loses what's important. And I think what happens with Margot is she goes from having everything she wants to getting what's important. So I really think Margot wins in the long run in this one.
I would agree with that. I think Margot is happy at the end, and I think love is what she's always wanted, and she finds it with Bill. I have a little problem with the line, "I don't need to do theater anymore because now I have something better to do with my life at night because I'm a married lady." But it's the 50s, so it's okay. But I think Margot's happy at the end. I think she realizes she has what's important in life.
I think also.
So you don't think she's unhappy? She's going to become one of those little happy housewives.
I'll give it a year, but I think at the beginning she's happy.
She does promise to go on the road.
Yeah.
Jim, we have another question from the Q&A, and my co-host here is going to ask the question.
Okay.
This is from Craig Johnson, who asks, Eve is often thought to be a euphemism to Sunset Boulevard, yet in the film, she has a much deeper story. Why do you think that is so? Why do you think that persists?
Arnold, that's your question.
Yeah, yeah. Arnold, you brought that up in your pre-show lecture, didn't
Yeah,
you?
no, I have to say I don't know. I think with in other words, comparing Swanson and Margot, they're both tortured artists. They're both, I guess, kindly way to say it is they're both a little neurotic with the Gloria Swanson character kind of on the far end of that, especially at the end. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Go into the notion of at the end of the film with Margot, the comments that she makes about matrimony and how, I mean, it's very much like the kind of gender politics of it are very, she's really stuck in a certain place and that's where she's going to be. And we don't get that at all with Swanson. I mean, Swanson, even at, all the way through comes through as a great tortured artist. She's a great artist. And we don't, with Davis, she's kind of pulling back in. But I don't know that it's tricky. I don't know. In some ways, we know more about why Margot is the way she is, but we don't know as much about the kind of triggers for Swanson's psychological responses. But I think her responses are more profound. In some ways, I think she's the more psychologically interesting character, and I think she also is. I don't want to, in some ways, a more genderless character. In other words, she's a great artist. Margot's thing is, she's worried about being older. She's very kind of stuck in about the way people think about her as a woman artist. She's not really free from that. Swanson is like, where's my close-up? I am
big. Yeah, the pictures that got small.
Yeah, so I think they're different in that way.
You raise another subject that's really an ongoing theme in the film and in our virtual theater performance. And this is a question that Randy raised also. And what does the story say about ageism in our society, especially in the performing arts? I've heard actresses in their 40s say that their careers are through. Unless you're Meryl Streep or Helen Mirren, once you hit a certain age, the opportunities just don't exist. That seems to be something that Margot is dealing with in the play. What does it say about our society? Anybody chime in? Yes, Charlene.
Well, being an aging actress myself, I can kind of, relate. I have to say the best parts I've had have been in my older years. Of course, there are parts that I'll no longer play, parts that were on my bucket list that I'll never have a chance to play now. And that's kind of sad. And Alicia, you're just at the beginning, so yay. But the most interesting parts in theater, I think, are for the older ladies. And so I've been really appreciative of that. I know stage is different than movies. I think in the movies, there is a lot more priority placed on looks. And so I think movie actresses do have a tougher time, but I think stage actresses, you just kind of get better like wine, I'm hoping.
I also wonder to what extent that's an American phenomenon because, just kind of drifting through the films of the last 15 or 20 years that are foreign films, there's some amazing films with actors who, female actors who were big in Italian neorealism in the 50s. And, they're still doing, Isabella Huppert. And there's lots of these people who are just, who are really, really powerful.
Catherine Deneuve in France.
Well, I just think there's a richness, and I think they're thinking of storytelling differently. I almost wonder if, I want to say maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it was harder. That suddenly in films like today, like obviously in the 50s and 60s, it was harder for an older actress. Then today I think there's this kind of blossoming of, and I don't even mean just like 3 older women on a going to Las Vegas kind of movies, but I mean stuff that's about real relationships and health and love and stuff that's really powerful. So I think those opportunities are there. Maybe I'm just optimistic.
We're coming to the end of our panel here. Are there other issues, questions, things? Arnold, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to raise was Randy and I were talking, and we've gone back and forth about the kind of the gender issues in the film. And one of the things that really struck me is I was trying to think about films with women as villains. And when you Google this, you get lots of women in either Bond movies or superhero movies. And so I was trying to think about female characters in 30s, 40s, 50s movies. And it seems to me that there's a couple of these kinds of categories. There's women in screwball comedies, and they are generally reacting against another woman. So I'm thinking of Bringing Up Baby, and there's the other woman that that is after the paleontologist, and she's a stuffy and library type, with all that. So it's the other woman type. The other example I'm thinking of is My Man Godfrey, where the older sister is the bad woman, but they're nowhere evil. They're not evil the way Eve is evil. They're not genuinely evil. Then I was thinking of Barbara Stanwyck in The Lady Eve, where she's a gambler and she's tricking Henry Fonda, and she's not evil either. She's just kind of I don't want to say she's a gambler. She tricks people. That's what she does. So those are screwball comedy is one type of a feminine model. Then another model is the bad mother. And here I'm thinking of Mildred Pierce, which in the movie there's a murder. In the book, of course, there isn't, but she's the bad mother. There's the noirs. So we have like female dangerous women who are both sexual objects, but also dangerous objects. And then I was looking at Kiss Me Deadly, which is a woman who actually is a murderer. And it's a crazy noir film where they're after this radioactive substance, and everybody blows up. It's a wild movie.
Bizarre.
But I was also thinking about Marilyn Monroe, who does, and I don't know, this is a wonderful film, Don't Bother to Knock, where she plays a babysitter who's insane, and she's trying to kill the baby. It's really good. It's a little bit under the radar. But she's not really evil either. She's damaged in some way. So it was really interesting to kind of think about what is the nature of evil. And then of course I just started thinking about Shakespearean characters. I think in some ways there's a way that Eve is like Macbeth, but I think the more I thought about it, she's a lot like Iago. She's somebody who has an agenda. She wants to do something. She's a sociopath in a certain sense. She can lie without, I'm sure that she could pass a lie detector test talking about her dead husband, that kind of thing. She's really good at it, and I'm sure Iago could too. So it felt that those are the issues of it doesn't seem like there are evil, female villains in the period. And then, of course, I was thinking, well, there's Kill Bill and all that. So we get other kinds of, vengeance films and things that come much later. But anyway, I would just kind of put that out there.
Great. Thank you. That was very interesting. Charlene?
I was going to say, from an actor's perspective, I used to always play the ingenue, and then as I got older, actually Jim cast me in my first not so nice part in Romeo and Juliet. I played Lady Capulet, and he had me playing Lady Capulet as not so nice, and it was fun. Oh my gosh, those parts are so much funner than the sweet young things. And so I played Lady Macbeth as well. And someone told me, I had an acting teacher one time who said, when you're playing a part and the part is not a nice person or an evil person, as Arnold is saying, the character doesn't think they're evil. Right. They're just out for something. They have needs and wants. And so as an actor, whenever you're playing one of those parts, you don't play it as evil. You just play it as, I'm a good person. I have some wants and I need to get what I want. So it's interesting that you brought that up about the kind of the evil parts.
So we have another question from the audience. Why is this film considered a classic?
Certainly,
good question.
What
makes a classic?
Yeah, good question. But the box office was, it was respectable, but Samson and Delilah pulled it significantly that year. Sword and Sandals, not a very good film. But you know, the company of actors, Mankowitz's writing, which was superb, and incidentally, in the script, he capitalizes theater always. Even though he really didn't have any theater experience, he was in love with the theater. He was essentially a film writer and not a theater person, and moved to New York to be around theater people because he liked theater people. He preferred them to Hollywood folks. So, I mean, I think if you look at the film itself, the costumes, which I was going to ask the actresses, gee, didn't you miss those fabulous Edith Head's dress, Eve, and I think they won an Oscar for both of them, even though Bette Davis said, Head only works for me and designs my dress, and he can have all the others. Also, I think the nature of the times, I mean, it is really a talky film. I think that kind of film would be challenging today, that length and that much dialogue.
Yeah, at that point, though, it would make a great stage play today.
Yeah.
Yes,
Did you
yes.
have your hand up, I thought?
Yeah, my question was there ever attempted a remake of this movie into a more modern setting? And if not, you kind of just answered it, but why not?
I mean,
Well,
there's Applause, which was, you know, later and was a big hit. And it had Lauren Bacall in it, who wouldn't have been Desperately Young in the lead. So, so there's that too. But yeah, I think it'd be tricky to make today, but in part because of the gender politics. I think you could do it as a stage play. You know, because it does feel very stagey. But I think compared to even other films of the time, you know, whether it's Citizen Kane or whether it's Sunset Boulevard, it doesn't have the kind of technical, you know, it feels like, it feels very stagey.
It's a stage play, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
you had a
I
comment?
know two actresses that would love to have the Gallo Center do the stage play version of All About Eve. And
Yes, please.
let's keep it on the list there. I want to ask the last question to Randy Siefke. Randy, when the pandemic hit, before the pandemic hit, we were already thinking about our upcoming season.
Yes.
And one of the plays that we were going to open with in October, right before the election, was Born Yesterday. And I thought that it had all kinds of contemporary political significance to it.
Really?
Of course, Judy Holliday won the Academy Award in 1950, beating out Bette Davis.
Well, and also Anne Baxter.
Yeah.
Because they were both on the ballot as best actresses. So had Baxter not campaigned for that, probably would have gone to Eve, according to the insiders.
Yeah, yeah.
We have one more question
One more question
from our guest that said, how did it feel to play such an iconic role made famous by Bette Davis?
Charlene,
Wow.
that's for you.
Yeah, I think anytime you're trying to recreate a role that's made famous by someone else who's done such a marvelous job, it's a little bit overwhelming. And I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to see the movie before I did the filming. I was afraid I would be so intimidated by her performance that I would freeze up and not be able to do my own take. I think that's why a lot of our movies that are remade, when we have remakes of some very famous movies, I think they fall so flat. I'm thinking of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and how, you know, who could compete with the original version. And a lot of the shows that we have with newer, more popular actors, I just don't think they compare with the original version. So it was difficult, and I just did the best I could.
Alicia, you
Take
want
up
to comment?
smoking.
Yes.
Alicia, you want to comment?
Sure. Well, Charlene, you did wonderful. So I think you definitely did the part justice. I honestly, when I got this part, I had never heard of All About Eve. And I didn't know until a little later how iconic that was. And I think that was probably a good thing for me, because I was really able to make it my own. And again, I didn't want to watch the movie until afterwards, for that reason as well. But yeah, it's definitely always a challenge when it's like, oh, well, this is, the more we're getting into filming, I'm really, oh, this is kind of a big deal. But it definitely puts a little more pressure on, and I think it makes you work that much harder too. So yeah, it was definitely intimidating, but just also a very honoring experience to be able to get to play that role.
Great, thank you.
So one quick comment that maybe it's a less iconic film today, because I think it was initially number 17 when they first did a survey on greatest films out of the top 100, and it's now in 27th or something like that. So there has been some reconsideration of its greatness, if you will. Critics love it. I mean, it's still in virtually every book as a great film.
Any other comments from our panel? Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, I want to thank all of the panel members. This has been a lively, great discussion. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I want to thank the State Theater for sponsoring this event. I want to thank the Gallo Center for the Arts for the opportunity to produce our virtual theater productions. And let me just do a preview of upcoming attractions. Next up will be our production of the classic Orson Welles spooky story, The Hitchhiker, which will be performed by an all African-American cast. Our Sankofa Theater is going to join with us for that production. Wes and I are already in the planning stages of that. And our final production is going to be the classic comedy, Arsenic on Old Lace. So we've got two great projects coming up. We'll keep you informed when they're available. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And I want to hand it back now to Kirsty for some closing thoughts.
Well, I want to say thank you again to Gallo Center for partnering with us. We hopefully can do a couple more partnerships with your upcoming radio shows. It's a perfect conglomeration, and just the stimulating conversation just shows what we can do during this pandemic. And we're all doing this for free, but it shows how we bring our community together. So I appreciate what Gallo Center has provided, the actresses, actors, and our Randy and Arnold. So I appreciate you guys being here and doing that pre-talk, which takes a lot of work. I know it's 30 minutes of very stimulating conversation and a lot of research that goes into that. So I want to thank both of you guys for doing that. Like I said, next week we've got Dead Poet Society. Oh, lost me. With their own Sam Piersdorf. And if you don't know Sam, he is a big personality, and it's gonna be very entertaining. So sign up for that. And his son Hakeem is moderating, and his son Hakeem works at the State Theater. So we're really excited about that one. We've got The Natural coming up in August, and My Cousin Vinny coming in September. So stay tuned. We've got a lot of these great kind of conversations going on. Like I said, we've got the drive-ins coming up, hopefully, and then I'll be sending out a survey. And again, support the Gallo Center and Gallo Center Repertory Company and the State Theater, and stay tuned for future things going on in our wonderful community. So thank you for being here. Anyone else?
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Fasten your seatbelts.
And
It's gonna be a bumpy night.
posting this on our YouTube page if anyone missed it or missed the beginning or missed part of it. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks, Wes. Thanks, ladies. Alicia, Charlene.
You guys did great work. I was really pleased. It was really something.
Thank you so much.
And Wes, my God. It's great.
I mean, Wes, I don't know how you do it. You make those people
I
look
know.
room.
So,
And
so
also
between.
the pregnant and with the purse, like.
It worked.
This is a fun
It worked.
challenge.
So if Jim has worked with you for 40 years and I've worked with you for 30 years, that makes 70 years worth of experience.
And it's all been great.
It's all been, yes. Yeah, you are a community gem, believe me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Plus
All
you
right,
dress
have
up.
any no final comments, questions?
Thank you.
No, thanks.
Let's do it again.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a treat.
Night, everybody.
Thursday.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.